One of the things we want to talk about today is why benchmarks are lying to you. Or maybe not telling you the whole truth is a better way to put it. Because they can be objectively true in the numbers. You run the test, you look at the frame rate, you look at the frame time graph, you look at the 1% low, and there's your numbers. You generate a chart, and you say, see, there's the performance. You don't need anything else. Well, these lie to you because there's more to a computer's performance than a frame number and a frame time and a 1% calculated low. There's level load time, task switching time, input lag and responsiveness, system hitches generated by background tasks, game update times, Windows boot times, Chrome times, times to generate web pages, the ability to multitask. There's more to a computer than just a benchmark chart of an average and a 1% low frame rate. And there are endless videos on YouTube and websites going, here's the new 30 series graphics cards, here's the new Ryzen CPUs, we tested Cyberpunk 2077 at 1440p and we got this number, and then we tested it on this CPU and the number only went up by 5 frames per second. And so clearly it's unnecessary. The only people who believe that are people who don't really use computers. They just run benchmarks all the time. A really good example of this, and I am not ragging on him, but I'm going to use Gamers Nexus as an example. Gamers Nexus has done a video. We really should react to the video. We should actually do a reaction video to it, where he demonstrated that a Ryzen 5 5600X could beat an i9 10900K in benchmarks.
But that doesn't say anything about a use case. That's just a benchmark.
Right. And there's no world in which you'd want a 5600X, assuming the price was equal, over an i9 10900K. There isn't.
And a 9900K?
No, a 10900K.
A 10900K.
The 10-core 20-thread chip.
Right.
And anybody who thinks so hasn't used them. I have both. I've used both extensively. If you would actually take, pretending price is the same. Now, if they're not, that's a differentiator. If one's cheaper, that's fine. But if I just offered to give you both CPUs, there is no circumstance under which you would say that the 5600X would be a better choice. It is objectively and subjectively not a better choice. But benchmark chart, well, yeah. So fine. So the 5600X will do 210 frames a second, and the i9 10900K will do 200. Whoop-de-frickin-do. That assumes a clean test bench with nothing running in the background.
Correct.
That assumes no hitches from running out of cores and threads.
Correct.
That assumes you don't use your computer for anything else.
Correct.
That assumes today's games only and not future games, which will be more highly threaded because of the new consoles.
Correct.
That assumes that you will only ever use one monitor. You'll never run a background task. You'll never use voice. You'll never stream. You'll never record your footage. You'll never listen to music. You'll never watch a YouTube video.
Yep.
That assumes that you don't care about level load times, Windows boot times and update, Chrome and general Windows desktop performance.
Correct.
You don't care about multitasking.
Correct. You don't have multiple monitors. You're not playing at 144p, 144 hertz.
So it's true. The 5600X 6-core 12-thread Zen 3 chip will beat a 10-core 20-thread i9 10900K in the right conditions.
For that use case.
Which is called running benchmarks.
Which is a benchmark use case.
Which is just running benchmarks. If all you do is run benchmarks...
Yay!
Yay!
You win. You get 2 gold stars.
Let me give you an analogy. I'm going to do a car analogy because we love car analogies here. The Dodge Demon. 4,000+ pounds of Detroit steel. It's not sophisticated. It's not fancy. It is actually pretty fancy with a 7. No, the Demon actually has 840 horsepower when you put the right fuel in it with the right stuff. 840 horsepower. It is faster than a LaFerrari. on a drag strip in a straight line. Do you think that if you went out onto the track where you had to turn, it would beat a LaFerrari?
No.
Do you think a 4,000+ pound, a 2-ton hunk of Detroit steel is going to outturn a 2,000 pound LaFerrari?
No.
But the benchmarks say that in a straight line on a drag strip with a little bit of rollout, it'll do about 2.1 seconds, 0 to 60, and about a 9-something quarter mile. It's impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you want a little secret, LaFerrari hasn't lost any value for a reason.
Exactly.
Extreme example. But if you brought it back to reality, a Porsche 911 Turbo will get beaten on the drag strip by a Dodge Hellcat, by a Challenger Hellcat. But nobody's going to argue that a Hellcat is a better cruising, is a better track car than a Porsche 911 Turbo.
Correct.
Weight, handling, balance,
Use case.
engineering, use case.
John here says, the point of the Gamers Nexus test is control as many variables as possible. We can't test every single person's setup. That's what we're saying, is that people are taking that number and applying it to their use case when they shouldn't be. So we're not saying that he's doing it all wrong. He's doing it all right. It's the people on the other end taking the information that are not using that information correctly.
It's absolutely true. I'm guilty of it too. I've published lots of videos on completely clean test benches with benchmark charts and numbers. I've done the same thing. I'm not calling Gamers Nexus out.
No,
I believe
we're
Steve's
calling
numbers.
we're calling the viewers out.
We're calling the process out.
Yeah.
Let me put it this way. I believe Gamers Nexus numbers. I believe they ran the tests and the numbers they show us the numbers they got. I'm not saying the tests are wrong.
No.
I'm saying the tests don't tell the full story. I have the same problem. I've talked many times in our videos about how the testing process is flawed because it is not a real-world application test. There comes a point, let me put it this way. If you want to know the 0 to 60 time of a car, that's easy to determine. If you want to know the quarter-mile time of a car, or how much horsepower it has, or what the G-loading on a skid track is, those are all tests that you can run repeatedly. You can hand a LaFerrari and a Dodge Demon to 10 different people, and they can take them out on the racetrack, and they can all go determine numbers. What if you wanted to review a Honda Odyssey minivan? As Doug DeMiro noted when he test drove one and did a video on one, he goes, I don't even know how much horsepower this is, and neither does anybody else who owns one. Enough. It has horsepower. It goes. You push the pedal. It merges.
It does a wheelie if you put your foot down on the accelerator too hard.
Yeah, I mean,
the lights.
It's fine. You know, it enough. So what do you do when you review such a thing? There's no real numbers. I mean, you could talk about legroom and footroom and the fact that it has 14 cup holders for 7 seats, which is kind of absurd.
That's America for you right there.
We have 2 cup holders per seat. There's 14 cup holders for 7 seats. Something is broken there. Everybody needs 2 cup holders. It really does, too, which is mind-blowing. And there's like 18 USB ports that there aren't really, but I mean, there's a lot.
I like Lance's question. So why don't you benchmark your actual use system to show real-world numbers? Because everybody's system is different. And like John said, you cannot benchmark whatever that system is. Maybe 2 people might have that.
Soggy fries. This is a Dodge minivan.
Exactly.
Well, here's the other problem with testing for that real-world case. They're not repeatable.
No,
you can run them 10 times, you get 10 different numbers.
Exactly.
When you open other things, if I have Backblaze backing up, if I have a YouTube playing a video, the results are extremely inconsistent. Sometimes it's a big deal, sometimes it's less. I have played around with it to try to see whether or not I can show something. I've tweeted many pictures of my personal machine at home, of background tasks running. I've shown my task tray. I've shown my system processes. And you say, great, benchmark that. I tried. I loaded up the Division 2. I have MSI Afterburner on my machine at home. I'm like, all right, let's try this. Let's try it again. Let's try it again. Oh, it's 3 completely different numbers.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean anything. It's not.
And there's so many different setups that.
When you have a clean test bench, when I do benchmarking where I show you numbers, those are machines where the antivirus notifications are turned off. Windows Update is turned off. There's nothing on it. I do clean reinstalls on those machines every 6 months.
Backup isn't running.
There's nothing running in the tab. It is empty, clean. It's an open air test bench. It's properly cooled. It's very nice. Everything's working perfectly.
Yeah.
But what it does mean is the tests are relatively repeatable. Now, what's interesting is they're not always 100% perfect. There is some variability in the test, and you have to run the test several times, and sometimes you get outliers and weird results.
Well, when you do enough of them, you can look at the numbers and go, hang on a minute.
But if you have a system you're using, the background tasks are so variable, producing objective numbers off of them is virtually impossible because they're not comparable to anything. You can't repeat it. Now, I've seen other places attempt to do so. Specifically with drive activity, there is a trace recording that an Antec uses when testing drives to do their destroyer test. What they did is they recorded reads and writes over time as a pattern that they could then simulate by doing reads and writes at the same volumes and frequencies as a, quote, recorded test.
Yep.
I have looked at what they've done. It's better than nothing. I've stopped looking at those numbers because here's what's missing in such a test. There's no human interaction because they have those running on batch files.
Yeah.
There's nobody sitting at the keyboard feeling the latency of the machine. And that's the problem with trace recordings.
Yeah.
I thought about that as well. I thought, is there a way to automate opening and closing? You could do that with scripts where you could have a certain number of windows open, launch specific tasks, do them in a certain order, and time the whole thing. But then there's input lag of when you click the icon or you open the new window and you hit play, how long does it take for the YouTube video to start loading? Is there an audio hitch when you alt-tab to the game? Those are human interaction experiences that aren't recordable in a spreadsheet.
Nope.
So here's what happens. When Doug DeMiro reviewed the Honda Odyssey minivan and said, this is going to be a very long one. When Doug DeMiro reviewed the Honda Odyssey minivan, one of the comments he made, at the end of it on the daily score, he said, we're talking about a minivan that has, this. It may not be self-driving, but it has a vacuum cleaner built right into the back. This easily gets a 10, and frankly, if we were ever going to give a vehicle an 11 in this category, this would be it. What objective test does practicality on a vehicle review have? What objective number-based scientific test can you give for practicality in a vehicle review? None. Now, his acceleration test, he has an acceleration one.
Yeah.
That's objective. He has specific numbers he uses to determine.
True.
But even his fun factor, his weekend score, cool factor is one of his numbers.
Yep.
What's a cool factor? It's whatever Doug DeMiro says it is.
Yeah, that's subjective right there.
So there comes a point at where the subjectivity of the reviewer comes into play.
It does.
And so here's what you have to ask yourself. Has Doug DeMiro driven enough cars, and does his car experience as a whole qualify him to be able to say, this car is better than that car? I suspect here's what really happens. He drives the car, he plays with the car, he messes with it, he spends several hours with it. He thinks back to all the other cars. He looks at his Doug score spreadsheet, and he thinks to himself, what's this better than and what's this worse than? It needs to get a lower total score than that because objectively a LaFerrari is better than a Porsche 911 Turbo. But a Porsche 911 Turbo, but a LaFerrari is worse than Bugatti Chiron. So the Bugatti Chiron has a score higher. So this needs to get about a 68. Okay, well, a couple of these are objective. And you kind of work your way backward and you go, I might give it a 7 on or 8 on the cool factor and a 7 on the value. And you end up at the score there.
Correct.
And I'm sure that there's a lot of his viewers that if they ever thought that he actually decided his final score first and worked backward to get to his score, they'd go, that's rigged, man.
No,
It's his score system. He can make it anything he wants.
Well, and then he's factoring in his experience.
That's the point. He's trying to determine. Some of it's just for fun. When he gives a Doug score to a LaFerrari or a Bugatti Chiron, he just did the Bugatti Divo, an $8 million car.
Oh, yeah.
What difference does it make what the Doug score is?
Exactly.
Part of what you're watching is you want his opinion because he has more car experience than you do.
Correct.
When you watch a tech reviewer, I will sometimes say subjective things, like 8 cores is better than 6, and you'll be surprised because it won't show up in the benchmark chart, but it will show up in the user experience. Where's the benchmarks, man? I'm telling you from my experience that 8 cores is a better overall computing experience. If you're the kind of person who buys premium parts and you're playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Cyberpunk 2077, you want 8 cores. In fact, you might want 10 or 12. But 6 cores benchmark's okay. Stop using benchmarks as your only measure. It's one measure. It's an important measure.
It is.
It's the start.
It is.
It's not the end.
Nope. And many people use it as the end. It's just the beginning.
It's one piece of information. Now, this has already gone on ridiculously long, but I'm going to put in one more thought. Rogue, what computer do you have? What's the CPU in your computer at home?
A 3600X.
A Ryzen 5 3600X. Okay. What CPU do you have in your computer sitting right over there right now?
A Ryzen 9 3900X.
On a per core basis, a 3600X and a 3900X are the same. The individual cores are the same. The clock speed's the same, 4.2 at home, 4.2 gigahertz at home, 4.2 here. They're both Zen 2.
Correct.
Both machines have 32 gigs of RAM.
Correct.
Both machines have RTX 2080s.
Correct.
Exactly. They both have 2080s. They both have 32 gigs of RAM.
Correct.
They're both on 1440p monitors.
Correct.
They're both Zen 2.
Correct.
They both have good NVMe SSDs.
They do.
She doesn't play Assassin's Creed Valhalla or Cyberpunk 2077. What game do you play more than anything else?
World of Warships.
World of Warships does not use 12 cores. World of Warships does not use 6. World of Warships uses 3.
Yeah, but I don't.
Here's the point. Is there a difference in overall computing experience? Now, you have multiple monitors in both machines.
Correct.
You'll have a Twitch stream or YouTube video up.
Correct.
You actually have backup running. You use your computer.
Yep.
Is there a difference in playing World of Warships on your computer at home with a Ryzen 5 3600X versus playing World of Warships here on a Ryzen 9 3900X?
There is a difference between loading screens. The 3900X loads faster, but the actual gameplay, no. But
so if we were to benchmark them, they would benchmark the same.
They would benchmark exactly the same.
But can you feel a difference between them? Is the overall computing experience of switching tasks, using your web browser, typing stuff, playing the game, the little spinny thing when you're waiting for the battle results?
Correct. All of that goes much faster on the 3900X.
How do you benchmark that?
I don't know.
You don't. You know what you do? You listen to people who have used both. And you either believe them or you don't. At some point, you either go, this person has driven all the cars. And so when they say that the Honda Odyssey is better than the Kia Sedona minivan, but the Kia Sedona is cheaper and it has just as much horsepower and they have the same number of seats. So they're exactly the same.
Same number of cup holders.
They probably do have the same number of cup holders. But that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
What is the difference between a Kia Sedona and Honda Odyssey? And you'd look at it and go, well, the Kia Sedona is cheaper. Yeah, but you got to go drive them and feel them. They're just different. And at some point when you're trying to decide between them, either you need to go drive both of them.
Correct.
Or...
You know, I think what happens is that people will go drive both of them and then go, oh, that's what Doug said.
Yeah. There's...
Like, oh, ha, ha, ha. Or people will switch from 6-core to a 12-core and go, oh, that's what Tech and Rogue were talking about. And we see that quite often in the chat or in your comments.
Somebody in chat just said experience score. We need to come up with a tech score,
a use case score,
a rogue tech score, where we can. Let me put it this way. You don't all need 12-core CPUs. You don't have to have a 12-core CPU to enjoy your computer. Here's where you will notice it. Use the 6-core chip, then go to a 12-core chip and go, that's a nice upgrade. Yeah, okay, it's nice. And then go back to the 6.
Yeah. You have to go. Well, see, because like for those of you who are new here, I can use anywhere from a 4-core, 8-thread chip on Intel all the way up to an 18-core, 36-core chip on Intel with every AMD in between. So I can use a 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 16, 18 core in one day. So do I notice the difference in loading screens and use? Yeah, I do, from switching between. Also to 16 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of RAM, 64, 128, and going back. So
putting 32 gigs of RAM in your system isn't going to give you more frames per second.
No.
It's going to make your computer nicer to use.
Exactly.
I'll use another 16 gig system over my cold dead body, quite frankly, because it sucks. Well, the frame rate's the same. Yeah, it's more to using a computer than frame rate.